we go. Yes, I'll be talking to you today about creative engagement with Hispanic literature through generative AI, and specifically multimodal AI, some multimodal, some text-based. So the rapid integration of generative artificial intelligence into society represents a defining challenge and opportunity for higher education. Beyond its disciplinary applications, AI is reshaping the core functions of the university, forcing a reevaluation of everything from academic integrity and assessment to the very nature of knowledge creation. As institutions grapple with this paradigm shift, the central question is no longer if AI should be used, but how it can be integrated into the curriculum in a way that deepens learning and fosters critical rather than passive engagement. The imperative is to develop new pedagogical frameworks that prepare students for a future where human AI collaboration is the norm. A key driver of this transformation is the emergence of multimodal AI systems like OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, Flux, and Suno. Unlike earlier text-only models, these tools expand the expressive possibilities for students by allowing them to synthesize information and create original work across different formats, including text, image, and audio. This technological leap, as Kuchman et al. Emphasize, I quote, has reshaped our previous perceptions, bringing to the table a fresh set of opportunities and challenges for education. For the language and literature classroom, where the goal is holistic communicative competence, these multimodal capabilities offer a unique opportunity to preserve the rigor of textual analysis while appealing to auditory, visual, and kinesthetic learners. At the University of Delaware, integrating AI into Hispanic literature courses has made textual study more interactive and reflective. This paper responds to the call for new AI pedagogies by illustrating a multimodal model in action through classroom activities centered on the poetry of Gabriel de la Concepción Valdés, or Plácido, and Rubén Darío. The examples provided were created in my fall 2024 course, Survey of Latin American Literature from the Pre-Columbian Era through Modernism. This approach transforms reading into a multimodal inquiry, enabling students to advance their linguistic fluency, interpretive precision, and awareness of how language, culture, and technology intersect. So some of this, give an overview. The challenge I was facing was trying to find a way to explore the intersections between AI and Latin American literary studies, making literary analysis more interactive and immersive. The goal is to use AI tools to enhance engagement with biographical context and textual analysis. And as I said before, I focus on Plácido and Rubén Darío. And we also, in these classes, by studying AI, one of the main topics that we also investigated was the notion of bias in AI. So that's something I'm going to talk a little bit about. So to give you an idea of who I'm talking about, Plácido was born in 1809 in Cuba, and he was executed for his participation in La Escalera conspiracy. And so he was a freed slave, but he worked actively to try to attain freedom for other slaves as well, and he died in the process. And some of the themes in his work include colonialism, identity, racial inequality, and freedom. So we're going to be talking about La Flor de la Caña, and I'll read it in English for you. This is the beginning. So it starts, I saw a tobacco worker, wheat-skinned and sun-kissed, so lovely that I have to move you guys, that the jealous sun, descending perhaps from a sacred sphere, enamored of her grace, burned her face with fire. She's tender and modest, like the sugarcane flower when it softly unfurls its first blossoms. And this is the romantic poem, romantic style, which is often about romantic themes, but also about freedom during the 19th century when Latin American countries were gaining independence from Spain. And this is a process that took the extension of the 19th century, ending in Cuba in 1898. And so at the end, it ends with precious Veguera with sun-kissed skin, have pity on the sorrowful one who so deeply loves you. See that I cannot live on hope alone, suffering this way is like a sugarcane flower. So in this poem, you see personal vulnerability and political commentary symbolized by the sugarcane's fragility. And one thing to note about this poem is that, so it was written by Plácido, but in the poetic voice actually represents that of a plantation owner. So a plantation owner that fell in love with one of the slaves on the plantation. So this is a forbidden love. So there's some political commentary that we're going to get into. To start the analysis of this work in class, so the students read the work, they answered comprehension questions, and engaged with each other through perusal. It's an online social media app to present works. So they came in with an understanding. And one thing I also do, because some of these works are older Spanish and difficult to understand, I do allow students to use AI to help with comprehension, with the caveat that they need to have like perusal tracks if they read or not read the work. So they have to have completed that task first. So the students came up with interesting prompts. Their creativity was not in creating images on their own, but rather in the prompts that they came up with in groups. So through their prompting, they showed their interpretive skills and how they visualized the work. And you see here, they had pretty detailed prompts. The white sugarcane flower in a green field, there's no sunlight, the sky's blue. So this one's more of like setting the scene, whereas the other one is more literal, a young wheat-skinned woman with curly hair down to her shoulders. She wears light-colored dress. And so, and it's trying to capture that romantic spirit of the poem. But using the visuals, we launched into a discussion about the themes and messages of the work. So it's a way to introduce it, to have an entry point, to get them engaged. And you see that the students' visuals were based more on the poem's imagery. Students found it more difficult to create an image on the political undertones. So we discussed strategies for doing so. And that takes us to the next activity. I've also used AI I've had students use AI to create poems based on other poems that we've read in the style of authors. And so what we did was students wrote poems using ChatGPT in Plácido's style. So here they had similar styles of the poems that were created, but they varied in the political and personal themes. And so this is interesting. This is a fragment of one of the poems that the students created that has a more political context. So it reads, like a wandering shadow beneath the burning sun, I walk in chains and sweat in silent cries. Yet in my chest, a bold spirit never dies. Its yearning pulses, fierce and never done. The wind lifts up my pleas into the skies, and air itself trembles, sorrow spun. My mourning echoes on, a constant run from hearts where grief and hope together rise. O liberty, bright star that calls to me, to you I send my verse with tenderness. To rise with you is in flight is all I seek. So this one, you see that this is a more politically charged poem that it reflects the students' comprehension of the underlying subtext, what is said, but not literally said in the poem. And you see the sub-themes of inner strength and resilience. And these are so the students create these poems and then they react. They react to the original, and then they react to the AI created one and compare. So this is the response of one student to the original poem. And so he thought it was emotional and full of beautiful details. So Plácido talks about a woman. So he's talking about Plácido, but the poetic voice that he clearly loves a lot. And he uses nature and everyday objects to describe her, like the flower of the sugarcane. And of course, all this is in Spanish and I've just translated. I liked how personal it felt, but it also kind of idealized, like he puts this woman on a pedestal. The way he repeats La Flor de la Caña at the end of each stanza gives the poem a soft musical feeling, almost like a song. Even though the poem is romantic, I know Plácido was also writing at a time when he was dealing with racism and oppression. So I think there's a lot more going on underneath the surface. So this was the original reading. And it's interesting. We discussed what romantic poetry looks like. It's not just this. This got us talking in class a little bit about what romanticism actually represented in Latin America at this time. So the group, in reacting to this poem they created, stated that this poem feels more serious and political. It's about someone who wants freedom and is suffering because they don't have it. We can see the influence of Plácido's life here, especially since he was imprisoned and later executed. Lines like, "O liberty, bright star that calls to me," made us think of his other poems about justice. But honestly, this poem sounds more like a classic sonnet than Plácido's original style. It doesn't have that Cuban flavor or the little everyday images like in Llovía Lluvia una Veguera. It doesn't feel the same emotional connection. So they're seeing that AI might be able to capture themes, but it's just not emotionally connected like the original, So it helps them identify the I guess the intent, the themes and the message in the original by looking at how AI might imitate it. Some of the benefits of creating poems with AI is that it actually enhanced literary analysis. It got us talking critically about the work, not just comprehending the work, but going beyond that. It deepened their historical understanding, and it also improved critical thinking. It sparked creativity, and it's an accessible entry point, and it makes older, complex texts more approachable by bridging language and style gaps. And the way I use it in class, it actually promotes collaborative learning through group discussion and creating prompts together. So one thing I do also in my classes is, so we may create poems. And so sometimes I don't do this in every single class. I'm showing you this class because it was an AI heavy class, from poems to songs with Suno. In many of the classes, we convert poems into songs on their topics. So what they do in groups is they look at the poem, they may edit it, and then they discuss what style. So they have to do a little research into the time period to know what the musical styles were. And Suno is actually pretty good. It does allow you to pick styles, and sometimes it gets it right, and sometimes it's like wrong. So students talk about that. I'll just play you a little fragment of what it created.
We're not hearing the
You're not
fragment.
hearing? Oh,
Yeah,
Yes, I'm so
oh, I
sorry.
didn't share. You know what? I know what I did
yeah,
wrong.
it's a pity.
Yeah, there's a way to fix that
There's
if
a
I,
way to fix it, right? You have
yeah,
to enable it, I think.
yeah, I
Okay,
have to, I
thank
didn't,
you.
okay, just need to allow it. No, I think I might have to go out and come back in, so we'll just have to,
Yes, I think you need to unshare your screen,
and
then
then
to
share, and
And I
then
think you
share
need to
sound.
enable sound. Yeah.
Got it. Sorry, I didn't just on.
Thank you so much. No worries.
Okay, I'll do it really quickly.
Como sombra errante bajo el sol ardiente, camino encadenado en sudor y llanto mudo.
You get the idea. It's actually pretty good, and it's really engaging for students. They love this, and they come up with all different styles that just it really gets them into it, and it increases an emotional connection, reinforcing emotional resonance. And it actually, so studies have shown that through song, students can remember facts better. So if you do tests on these things, they will remember the original and their emotional connection with it, but also kind of some of the themes and how they were able to reinterpret it in their poems. It enhances student engagement, and then it gives some contextual cultural understanding because they investigate the song styles and how this might fit with the the historical context of the time. It enhances interdisciplinary connections and allows for creativity and self-expression. So the last thing I'm going to talk to you about is an author we saw later in the semester, Darío, who is considered the father of literary modernism in Spanish. He was born in Nicaragua, and as a modernist, his style was innovative and musical, influenced by French symbolism and exotic themes. So what we did in this class was we focused on his biography, and students used AI to create questions to ask of Darío. And they asked ChatGPT's biographical questions and something about his some history question and stylistic question, expecting responses in Darío's voice. And the idea was to then deepen their understanding of Darío's literary context, themes, and influences, and then look at bias here. So this is so what I did was I gave the prompt, answer as if you're Ruben Darío, maintain historical accuracy, and use period-appropriate language. Something I also do is I ask ChatGPT to answer slowly, because sometimes it's above the level of students, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't work so well. But what you can do is get the conversation after the fact if you go into your ChatGPT account and be able to share that with students so they can look at the actual conversation. So the student prompts were for them, the example I'm showing you is how did the U.S. intervention shape Latin America's history? A very broad question. What modernist elements define your poetry, and why did your grandfather rename you Darío? Interesting. So Gloria asked about the U.S. intervention. And in the response, Darío said, Querida Gloria, which is dear Gloria, in my time, foreign influences were already being felt in our land, with both their lights and shadows. It's possible that without U.S. intervention, Latin America would have followed a different path, perhaps more autonomous and aligned with its own roots and aspirations. But history is a complex fabric, and every thread, no matter how foreign, becomes part of our identity, this is really interesting, how it's trying to capture this modernist aesthetic, for better or worse, in the response, and it's very broad. To Anina, another female student, and she asked about modernismo, and he responded, Querida, Anina, again, and then I sought to renew poetry, moving away from traditional molds and exploring new rhythms, forms, and themes. He combines musicality of verse and exotic symbolic poet imagery, always seeking beauty and the expression of the intimate. One thing that's really interesting too is that the ChatGPT is pretty smart, and it does try to imitate the language of the author from the country from which they come. So this is very interesting. It's pretty close. It doesn't do a terrible job of that. So it can be a great way to enhance students' comprehension by showing different manners of speaking, and it often uses slang from specific countries. In responding to Ben about the name change, it writes, Estimado Ben, which can be translated as Dear Ben or Esteemed Ben. And the response is really interesting. My grandfather gave me the name of Darío as a way to honor the family, as Darío was a surname with history in my lineage. My grandfather, a man of strong character and influence in my life, decided to change my original name. Do you see some difference here from the response to the female students and the male student? Through using the voice chat function, students' engagement was actually increased, and it tested their oral comprehension. It took them beyond the initial reading of the biography to focus on things that they wanted to know more about. Critical discussions were sparked, and we talked about where it could have explained better, further, and filled in some of those gaps in our discussion. So one thing we also discussed is, why might AI assign different salutations to female and male students, like Querida Gloria and Estimado Ben? As it consistently used Querida for women and Estimado for Ben, it also used more poetic language when addressing women. And students debated whether this reflected Darío's historical context and his potential manner of speaking with women, or whether or not it was AI in its own bias that was doing this. So there was no answer that we got to, because it could be both, it could be one, it's just really hard to say. And one thing students noticed is that the AI responses lacked nuance in complex political discussions, and other students thought that the AI responses might be too polished, so that's interesting. So what's pedagogical implications and ethics to consider are using these tools is cultural sensitivity and ethics are so important to talk about. To be transparent with your use of AI. I always do this. I tell my students when I use it, and I expect the same of them. And then also we discuss things like bias, when AI use is appropriate, when it is not. And I think it's very important then to balance traditional and innovative approaches. So I've shown you a lot of examples of where AI can be used, but there it's definitely a place where just the classic literary analysis and doing a mix is really, I think personally, is the ideal. AI enhances accessibility and engagement in literature, while students gain knowledge of the authors and works that we analyze, while also learning how to use AI tools, which is a skill set that we are now expecting students to know when they go out in the workforce. So they need to have this humanistic, ethical perspective of how AI is used in our classes. And it's another learning goal that I try to achieve in my classes as well. So another, what's the word? Not linguistics, but like AI literacy, along with Hispanic literature, the literacy in Spanish and things like that. So in conclusion, I'll just say these multimodal activities demonstrate that creative AI in the classroom extends far beyond novelty into the realm of deep pedagogical practice. When thoughtfully implemented, these tools cultivate critical thinking, enhance literary comprehension, and appeal to diverse learners by transforming textual analysis into an immersive creative act. And that's it. Oh, just so you know, there's a little plug. I have a channel, AI for the Humanities, where I give examples of how I use AI in the classroom, and I had interns that also do the same. So just something.
Wow. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Oh, wow, Megan. I'm fascinated by your presentation. It was really, really interesting. And what a great set of activities you did with your students. Let's see, I had something else I wanted to say. Oh, your work shows how AI can really deepen students'